When you have 16 cells, it's like having in a big sphere 16 marbles. How could you put them inside? It's very easy. You have to put 3 in the middle and 13 around. That is 7 at the equator and 3 on the top, 3 underneath, and 3 in the middle. Now, the result is that the 3 which are in the middle, which get compressed, suddenly decide that they will work together and they will build the body. Now, the surrounding ones, which will now expand that way, will build the membranes, and later they will build the placenta. Membrane and the placenta are just as important as the initiation of the embryo itself, because it makes a kind of space capsule in which this tiny cosmonaut will begin its own life, which we could not live at all if he was not producing himself its own capsule. So to speak, it's like an astronaut who would be building around himself the shuttle entirely. At the end of another division, one of the cells shifts its metabolism, and it is producing a stuff, maybe that cell, which is digesting the shell, and the whole thing goes out exactly as if it was already an animal. The way it goes out is like an animal going out. It hatches, and the hatching happens at around the 6th day, because the division occurs quite every 24 hours. That's very important, because if the hatching is too early, then the individual would go out inside the tube, because the tube is what carries the egg from the ovary to the uterus. And if it was hooking on the tube, it would be a great danger, because the tube cannot expand enough as a uterus, and the extrauterine pregnancy give rise to rupture, to bleeding, and they must be operated. I'll come back in a moment to that particular question, because Professor May brought to my attention very interesting publication, and I think it's important we come back to that. But not to complicate too much, let's continue. We have started the divisions, and then we look that at the 4th division, we have 16 cells, 3 in the middle. Now, you have to realize that in experiment, it's possible with an egg which has divided up to 8 cells or to 16 cells, to remove some cells and to put other cells coming from another embryo. That's easy with mice, and it has been made. And the result is extremely interesting. You take an embryo of mouse, which is bound to be a black mouse. You take another one which is bound to be a white mouse, because you know the progenitors, and it's easy to say that this one is a pure black, this one is a pure white. Now, you take part of the white and you put it inside the black one, after removing the cells, so that the number of cells remains the same. In most of the cases, it dies, because it's a rather complicated intervention. But in many cases, it survives, and what comes out is a tiny little mouse, perfectly healthy, but on the fur, you will see a kind of chessboard of parts which are dark, parts which are white, and you see that 2 lines of cells have combined to build the organism. Experimentalists are never happy with one experiment, so they tried to now take 3 different strains, 1 black, 1 white, and 1 khaki. And in that case, you get rare mice who have this chessboard with 3 different colors. Well, we have tried, when I say we, it's not me, but it's a specialist, they have tried to put 4 different lines, and they never get a baby mice with 4 different colors. The top number is 3. You can put 4, 5 different cell lines, only 3 are to be found in the mouse. Because at the beginning, the mouse is telling itself at the 3-cell stage, we are not a population of cells. We are bound to be a mouse. Now, if you manipulate it, they lose that information because you have removed some cells and you have put other cells. But when they compress themselves, they compact themselves, again you have 3 cells in the middle. And you cannot have more than 3 lines in the resulting mice. So those experiments have shown definitely that first the individuality was a kind of trinary system. We need to have 3 cells talking to each other to decide I am one individual. And you cannot use more than 3 cells to define one individual. Now, this very peculiar system allows us to understand what are the twins. Twins are just an error of calculation of the number of division so that you reach the time at which you should trigger compaction. Look what happens. At the 4th division, we have 16 cells, we get compaction, we have 1 baby. Now, if this compaction does not occur here, but you have another division, then you will have 32 cells. And inside the sphere of 32 cells, you will have, in the middle, 3 plus 3 and 26 around. And you will have twins, identical twins. Now, if you have another mistake and you continue to divide, then you would go to triplets. That's very interesting because it tells us that there is a calculating machine in this tiny embryo which is counting the number of divisions. Have divided 1, 2, 3, 4, then I compact. Sometimes the then does not occur immediately, then it divides another time and you get twins. So that there is an extraordinary property that even arithmetic is already acting during the first cell cleavage. There is a counter somewhere. We don't know how it is, and probably it's very simple. It must be exchanged between cells and chemical message. And that would be related with the necessity of having an odd number. Because with an odd number, the exchange cannot be equal. So you have a system to count the number of exchanges that you have got. What is now the reason of this presentation is that we know now that twins are carrying the same nature. And in fact, a set of identical twins, it's 2 persons sharing the same nature. That for us is not very complicated to understand. But the most curious is that some people can really feel it. I remember it was in the Academy of Moral and Sociological Science in Paris, Political Science in Paris. I was giving a talk about the early embryo. And one of my colleagues came after the talk and he told me, well, I did not want to say that in public. But you know, he was an old professor of law He was nearly 85 or 90 at that time. I don't remember exactly. And he told me I was a twin. My brother died a few times ago in an accident. And we had had exactly the same career. He was a professor of law like I am. And he told me, you have said that twins were one nature splitted in two persons. Now, I must tell you, doctor, that for my brother and I, the question of the Trinity was never to be discussed because we felt it was possible. I was very much impressed by this kind of confession. He was a very learned man, and really you have to be identical twins to understand that the idea of one nature splitted in two persons can be felt. Most of us have been made one by one. Nature is very kind with us, and she takes the trouble of not doing a series of us. We cannot feel those things, but twins do. But we know the contrary. And the little mice I was talking about with the chessboard is the contrary. Because in that case, we have united two nature in one individual. And that is known also in man. It happens sometime that at moment of the fecundation, when there are probably an error in the splitting of the egg, so that the egg is splitted in two cells. And one sperm come in it, one sperm come inside the other, and then the individual which will come out is a compound of two different genetic makeup. This has to occur at the very beginning, at the conception, because if it occurs later, it would be prevented by the closing of the zona pellucida. But if it has occurred just at moment of conception, you can have hermaphrodite, that it's individuals having the sexual appanage of Hermes as male and of Aphrodite as female, and they are abnormal indeed, but if you look at their cells, you will find that they have together XX as a woman, XY as a male, compounded in one individual. And those chimerics, hermaphrodites, are really two nature united in one person. That's taken together tell us that the beginning of the individual, that the beginning of our personal life has to arise at the moment of conception and at the latest time at the splitting in three cells. Then when people are discussing when does occur the individual, when does occur the unity and the unicity, we can answer, we know it occurs at conception, and if there are some mistake, maybe a few hours after conception, but no later than that.